Hey YouTube, my name is Razorrat, and where do I even begin with this chapter? I'm getting goosebumps and flashbacks to the epic Ohma vs. Wakatsuki fight from Kengan Omega, as I'll explain later. As I guessed in my previous review, Faye does do more than enough to keep the fight interesting after being grazed by Wakatsuki's blast core. In just the past 7 chapters, we went from having the impression of Faye being a pretty boy and presumably decent fighter, to him overcoming Wakatsuki in raw strength and showing himself to be a total force in the ring, armed with a mastery of the Nico style. For more than half the chapter again, Faye mercilessly blitzes Wakatsuki. He doesn't state the use of any specific Nico style techniques, but the ferocity of his attacks speak for themselves. He punches with unparalleled speed, counters without effort, and all the while sporting a smug grin on his face. And why shouldn't he? He's got the skills to pay the bills, and as long as he avoids Wakatsuki's hard hits, it's just a matter of whittling down his opponent's health, bit by bit, as he alludes to Wakatsuki being an RPG boss in the prior chapter. Unsurprisingly, Faye's allies in Purgatory are stunned that he was holding out on them. Whether or not they're aware that Faye is in league with the Worm is irrelevant, as Liu Donchen and Carlos Medel are flabbergasted by Faye's strength. The only one that is intrigued but largely unfazed is Lolong Donaire. This only adds to the multitude of little scenes hinting at his absurd strength, and I can't wait for the matchup between him and Ohma. Back to Faye. Despite his complete dominance, it becomes clear about halfway through the chapter that he is, in fact, succumbing to overconfident antagonist toying with his food syndrome, which in most cases tends to end badly. Faye does a lot of standing around flexing his abilities for all to see. This always tends to bother me when enemies have a time limit to their abilities and their arrogance gets in the way of expending energy properly. However, we get another flashback this chapter that largely justifies the blasé attitude Faye has during the entire fight. The other Tokita Nico has tasked Faye with defeating an opponent from the Kengan Association's upper echelon of fighters, but specifically not Tokita Ohma. He doesn't give a reason for not fighting Ohma, and this clearly lives as an unpleasant and unanswered thought in Faye's mind. He sees himself as the other Nico's top disciple, and the fact that Ohma is still of concern to the other Nico does in fact mean that Faye may not yet be important enough to the cause of Nico. Knowing this, the entire equation has suddenly been flipped on its head, and Faye's rationale for fighting all these past chapters can no longer be seen as just striving to win. If that were the case, he would be taking things more seriously, and have in all likelihood finished Wakatsuki by now. Instead, he is trying to prove himself to Nico, and since Faye still very much resembles a young man, this naturally manifests as Faye showing off. He casually wastes minutes standing around in his divine demon technique, and toys with Wakatsuki to show he controls the outcome, and can purposely drag things out as long as he would like, all in the hopes that Ohma, the other Nico, and everyone in the stadium, watching, will stay transfixed on his unearthly presence, and accept that he is the strongest. Unsurprisingly, this inevitably leads to his downfall. In the midst of the chaos, Wakatsuki holds on to the fight with his iron resolve and clings to Faye after taking the heaviest beating yet. It's the climax, and both characters summon the last of their strength to end the fight in a spectacular show. Faye clearly overdoes it and stresses his heart so much that he is able to break free of Wakatsuki's grapple. Now, I'm going to focus in on this scene for a bit, because in terms of how the muscles in the body work, this is by far the strongest feat we have ever seen in Kengan. Wakatsuki is seen bear-hugging Faye as hard as he can, trying to crush him according to Julius, as he is cheered on by Narushima Koga. While he is clearly injured, I'd say it's fair to assume that Wakatsuki is exerting nearly 100% of his strength still, due to the fact that we just had a brief flashback stating that Wakatsuki has never lost a match due to being overcome in the strength department. If anything, he is attempting to go beyond his limits, as we get a powerful close-up of Wakatsuki, staking his pride on the outcome of the confrontation. This is where a little scientific analysis shows us how staggeringly strong Faye is at his maximum output. Notice how when Faye breaks free of Wakatsuki's hold, he swings his arms outward in an external rotation. In a study on shoulder rotation strength ratio of baseball players and non-baseball players, part of the discussion of the results states the following. The internal shoulder rotators were found to be significantly stronger than the external rotators under all 9 testing conditions. This is consistent with the muscle size differences between the 2 rotator muscle groups. The large internal rotators, such as the latissimus dorsi and pectoralis major, are stronger than the external rotators, such as the infraspatus and teres minor. See where this is going? Another study on specifically strength ratios found the external rotator muscle capacity to be only 66 to 75% of the internal rotator muscle's output. So the setup is as follows. Wakatsuki, a man who has 52 times the average muscle density of a normal human, is exerting, let's say, 90% of that 52 times force in an internal rotator muscle bear hug, so 45.2 times the force of the average human. Faye is then able to generate enough force to not only break free, but send Wakatsuki flying off of him, with the on average 25% to 33% weaker external muscle rotation. It's a skewed matchup of strength in Wakatsuki's favor, and Faye still comes off on top by a mile. A further implication you can draw from this event is that if Faye exerted his muscles inward to the max capacity, they would generate 1.25 times the force, at bare minimum, than the external display of force we just saw. In other words, even if Wakatsuki's strength was at 100% output or higher, Faye would still outclass him handily. Whilst it certainly depends on the scenario that Faye is in, such that he ends up going all out, in such a case, it's not illogical to conclude that Faye is the strongest character in the series. Not Julius, not Wakatsuki, Faye. No one breaks out of bear hugs through sheer force. It just doesn't happen. Yoro Iizuka saw Pang didn't, Bakihama didn't. Oh wait, wrong series. Regardless, the point remains. Faye is a freak of nature and confirmed the strongest in Kengan via this one feat. Anyways, now that we've gotten the hot take out of the way, we can return to our regularly scheduled programming. So, Faye throws off Wakatsuki and is greeted with a wind-up of a final blast core from the Superman. There's no doubt that this would have finished Faye. However, with his reaction time and speed virtually peerless, he is in fact able to dodge and counter, sending Wakatsuki flying with his final punch. Interestingly enough, in both characters' internal dialogue, they each concede that they have lost the match. Wakatsuki acknowledges that even with his raw strength and technique, he couldn't reach Faye in the end. However, immediately after, Faye bursts due to his overexertion of Divine Demon, quite literally splitting at the seams. Right before passing out, Faye in a daze claims that he wasn't the one after all, most likely alluding to not being a true Tiger's vessel, as his body gave way in the end. Faye ends up falling at the end of the chapter, not because he was the weaker fighter, but because his own showmanship nature of fighting and the need to prove himself doomed him from the get-go. He had to endure the Divine Demon to truly win, and failed due to setting such high expectations for himself. While we are presented with a double knockout, I don't think it would be a stretch to say Wakatsuki will get up in the next chapter to claim victory. Such an ending would bring his character full circle, as when he last fought a Nico-style master, Tokita Ohma, he lost. He was at the time confronted with a secret technique, Demon's Bane, and was felled by it, unable to stay conscious. Wakatsuki now finds himself pitted against another Nico-style master employing another secret technique, Divine Demon. And although he has been battered and bruised, it would be a testament to the fearsome determination of the wild tiger if he overcame the odds this time and successfully rose back up. And that concludes this week's chapter review. Let me know down in the comment section your thoughts on my hot take that Faye is the strongest character thus far in the Kengan universe. With that, I'm Razorrat, scurrying on out of here.